Good morning, good evening, or good riddance. Welcome to the Spire Riffcast, where we'll be discussing all things metal, non-metal, and every point in between. With this podcast, we hope to lift the veil on our world in metal music and dig into some topics we've wanted to share with all of you. This will be informal, so please take our content with a grain of salt and a sense of humor. Right now, you're listening to the Riffcast episode 7. I think it's 7, right? Okay, it is 7. Good. I am Spire guitarist Pat Young, and I'm here with the one, the only, the locals only. I had to add that in there. Scott Dixon of 95X. Let's riff. All right, so this is weird. This is weird to me and a little intimidating because we're in the 95X radio station having you on as our guest, and it should be the other way around, which you were talking before we started.
We can do that eventually.
Yeah. So, yeah, you've interviewed all those bands, and I'm going to break the ice by saying I'm going to try my shitty best to make it smooth for you. So, hopefully.
I'm sure you'll be fine, man.
Okay, cool. Yeah, but since there's a lot to cover, and I don't know who doesn't know who you are, that goes to shows and is in the central New York music scene whatsoever, but if they don't, they need to come out to shows. So I just want to get like a little bit of a background from you, not your whole story, but like
industry-wise.
Yeah, just professionally.
I started playing music when I was like 15, and that's kind of a lie because I don't really play music because I barely play an instrument. I started singing in bands at 15 in high school, and as time progressed, you know, it got easier and easier. As you exercise, your muscles get stronger. As you sing, your voice gets better. So from 15 to 19, you know, the bands incrementally got better, and then college kind of came and took over, and because I had emancipated myself as a teenager, I was working full-time and going to high school and still being in a band. College is a different story, so, you know, right. You have to kind of keep the band on the back burner, and the worst possible thing happened at that point. The band that I was in got some label attention, and we actually got signed to Stardog Records, which was a subsidiary of Mercury at the time.
Oh, okay.
So, like, that was an interesting time in my life, you know, being almost 20 years old and having a record deal and a full-time job and full-time college, and it was a balancing act. Like, I think that's where my insomnia started, was, you know, not being able to sleep forced my body to learn how to exist without it. That record deal never came to fruition. We signed it, we recorded a few songs, and it never came out because they just didn't have the money at that point. Stardog was a label that was an imprint. I forget who the idiot musician who had the imprint was, but they didn't have any money until Ugly Kid Joe broke. Ugly Kid Joe was the band that made Stardog Records what it was, and up until that point, they were poor, you know, just like all of us today in the music industry. So they just didn't do anything with our record. They put it on a shelf. We got paid for our time in recording it, and then like 7 years later, the Booyah Tribe sampled one of my vocals for one of their tracks on one of their records, and I still get like random checks. The last one was for 28 cents.
Yeah.
So I'm rolling in it from that.
Baby.
But so at that point, like when that deal fell through, I got really, really bitter and soured on music, so I stopped playing and concentrated on school and work and saved up some money and, you know, did the responsible thing. At the time, I got my bachelor's degree in marketing and just really didn't want to work in that industry. It was the early 90s, and, you know, the political climate had changed, you know, after all those years of a Republican regime, and then Clinton steps into office, and now there's funding for the arts, and people are more interested in things like that, which happens when the White House turns blue. So, you know, I just decided that I was going to stick with the job that I had, which when I was 15, I started at Carl's Drugs, which became Phase, and then Eckerd, and a million other things, and now it's Rite Aid.
It was Carl's. I just knew it as Phase.
Well, you're what, 27?
I don't know what I am anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter at this point.
But yeah, this was like, I got my first job in 1988, and I stayed with it. And then as time progressed from, you know, stock boy to management positions. I ended up doing loss prevention, and it paid so well that like music wasn't even a blip on the radar as far as what I wanted to do. I was still a big fan. I mean, I was spending the majority of my disposable income on music and concerts and all of that stuff. So I never really lost an interest in music. I just got really, really bitter about the industry and just didn't want to be a part of it anymore.
Yeah.
So fast forward from 93 to 95, I get laid off from my job because I make too much money. Because at that point, I had been with the company 7 years, and they had an incremental pay rate increase in place, and I reached...
Sorry, you're too much of an asset for us.
Yeah, you've reached the ceiling. So either, you have to sign off on this paperwork saying that you're fine with never getting another raise from us, or we're going to lay you off. And it's just like, you're young, you're dumb, and you're just like, well, if I'm not going to make any more money, then why would I stay? So I took the layoff, and... I completely and totally abused the unemployment system and got 39 weeks of unemployment and sat on my ass and found...
Couldn't get to that 40, huh?
Well, it's 13 weeks at a time. 52 divided by 4, 13. So it's...
So you really went like...
Oh, yeah, dude. I took every last penny. We all pay into that shit forever, you know what I mean? And how many of us actually take advantage of it?
I'd pay for your unemployment.
Well, you didn't at the time.
I know, but I would.
You were a speckle in your
you know what
daddy's
I mean?
eye at that point.
Yeah, I would.
But at that point, I had a few friends that were playing in some bands that were making some noise around town, and it just didn't seem like any of them knew their ass from a hole in the ground. Like, they were all talented musicians, but had no idea that they were getting like financially raped by promoters and clubs and bar owners. So you have your conversations with your friends, and you're like, oh my God, you guys sold out the Lost, man. You guys have to be rolling in it. And they're just like, you got like $150 for that gig. Really? Because there was like 500 people, and I went, and I paid $7 at the door, and 7 times 700, that's almost a $5,000 gross. You headlined. How'd you get $150? And they were like, well, we only got 100 the last time we played there. I'm just like, okay, something's broken. Like, let me help you out here. Like, you're making all this money for these bars, and, it's just not happening. And granted, it was a different time. You know what I mean? Like, things are completely different now, the way the record industry's broken down and everything else. And it's just, and nothing against the regime at the time at the Lost Horizon, because I still do. I manage that club now. But back then, it was a different story. Like, when you're talking late 80s, early 90s, every band that came through the Northeast played the Lost Horizon. It's a legendary thing. It was in Rip Magazine. It was in Metal Edge.
Right.
Like, these bands loved playing that room because it was kind of a rock and roll fantasy, like band camp kind of thing, because it was just everybody has played there, either on the way up or on the way down. You've toured the club circuit. You've been to the Lost Horizon. And the names, that you can rattle off that have played there is endless, and it's great, and nobody believes you half the time, but... it's the truth. You can go back and find this shit on the internet. Like Guns N' Roses played the Lost Horizon. Faith No More has played the Lost Horizon multiple times. Korn, the Deftones, Soundgarden opened for Guns N' Roses at the Lost Horizon.
Wow.
So like,
it's good that it's still the Lost Horizon now after went through those name.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Club Sparkle myself. It was the weirdest thing about those Tundra years, and it was fun because I played there a lot. I was working for a different radio station at the time, so I was booking like a bi-weekly showcase, and I had a blast. But like, I like to smoke weed. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. Legalize it, finally, hopefully. But like, when you're stoned and you're in a baby blue room with sparkles, you just feel like you're in a video game. And it's not a fun experience. So like, that was the downside of the Tundra years.
You want the fake sparkles that you've created upon your own.
Yeah.
And that's
trails is what they're called.
Yes, you don't want authentic sparkles.
No, and the worst part is that they painted everything baby blue with sparkles. So like, you'd have a big national act in, and you'd black out the room, and as soon as the lights would come on, it was just like, boom, you're in a snow globe.
Nice.
And it was awful.
Throw glitter on people as soon as you come in.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so jumping back. So I started helping a couple of my friends' bands. The first one, which is actually ironic, was Nine Ball, based out of Utica, New York, who won the Sammy this year for Best Hard Rock, which is man, like a weird beginning and ending point. Like this whole year has kind of been that way for me. I've revisited a lot of that first year of my career and actually jumping in and doing something other than playing music in the industry. But, through that, I started a zine because zines were really big in the 90s, and for those of you younger folks out there listening, this is pre-internet. What you would do is you would assemble a few of your friends that had a good vocabulary and were articulate and passionate about something, and you would make these homemade fanzines where you would handwrite or typewrite your articles, and then you would piss off all the people at Kinko's by camping out and cutting and pasting because there wasn't Photoshop then. And it was cool, it was DIY before DIY was DIY. And then that sort of sparked some attention because I think people were sick of the same old, same old. At that point, grunge had been broken open and the mid-'90s alternative explosion was happening. And there was never more attention, as far as I'm concerned, in modern times on rock music than there was in the mid to late 90s and early 2000s. And you're talking about the fact that they did 2 Woodstocks in 94 and 99 because the rock world had expanded to that point yet again. You couldn't do that today. You really couldn't. I mean, you could get all these names and pile them all up, but you're not going to get 500,000 people to show up these days. Not with the way Bonnaroo and all of these other festivals have exploded across the country. Woodstock would be an afterthought. It's just like, because you can't recreate something that was so special back in the original days. And even that 94 one had a vibe to it. I mean, I was at 94 and 99. And 94, to me, and granted, I was not born when the original one had happened, but it was a different vibe. It was cool. Like, I'm glad the hippies had their thing back in the day. It's not for me, and I hate hippies more than almost anything in the entire world, just based off my experience at Primus the other night. But, the 94 experience was it was where rock kind of took the world back. It was, and as much as I dislike them now, Green Day epitomized what that new Woodstock was. It was just this sort of
I
fuck
grew
you
up
attitude.
on Green Day. That was my first transitional, band. I used to listen to hip hop, and my stepbrother got me into Green Day. So that was my first band.
And it's not that I don't respect Green Day. Mm-hmm. I just think that they've sort of Walmartized punk rock to a degree, and I think they're to blame for all these terrible pop punk bands. And I'm not saying all pop punk is bad. There are bands that do it and do it really well. Like 4 Year Strong was in town last night, and if I wasn't working, I would have been there because those guys take an interesting turn on it. They've taken pop punk and hardcore breakdowns and combined them into something that only really they can do. Even A Day to Remember is a little bit off from
those guys, I see them as similar, and then A Day to Remember started to branch up further and kind of follow more of a
because 4 Year Strong
formulaic.
To me is a more pure version of it because there's no dude with a laptop putting bass drops in. Like what they do is what they do on stage.
Yeah.
And with A Day to Remember, there's technology involved, and it's not as pure. And I'm not hating on A Day to Remember because I love those dudes. Second Sucks is one of my favorite tunes, to put on just like in the gym or at the club or whatever. Like there's something fun about that music. But to me, I consider 4 Year Strong more of a real band, and I put A Day to Remember in that sort of Andrew WK darkness category of sort of like a novelty thing.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would hate me for saying that, but it really is.
We won't tell them.
Yeah. We'll send it to them. They'll be fine. It'll be good. So all this attention got paid to the things that I was doing, which was basically just trying to get our local music scene to rise up the way the national rock scene had at the time. And it caught the attention of this really sketchy dude. I'm not going to mention his name because I think it's probably better that we don't.
Right.
But
we bleep them all out.
There was a venue in East Syracuse on Bridge Street that at the time was called Seventh Venue. And it was this weird dance club that had a strip club in the balcony. And you had to pay to get into the club, and then you had to pay to go upstairs to the strip club.
Heat rises.
It was awful. It was just the tackiest, sketchiest thing you've ever experienced in your life. And he was just like, I'm tired of the crowd we're getting. Like, let's do shows on Sundays. What do you mean shows on Sundays? Like, well, you guys do these hardcore shows. And I'm just like, yeah, that's cool. I'm not going to try and take that niche away from Hungry Charlie's. which for you younger people out there, there was a place called Hungry Charlie's.
You can just say, you don't have to, we'll disclaim it with, for you younger people out there.
All right, good.
That'll be any reference.
Because I forget, you know what I mean? Like, I mentioned this on Locals Only the other night, because I had the One Step From Falling dudes in, and I've known them for a long time. And, like, for
they got
me...
the new record, right?
Yeah, it's called The Wayside. They actually released it last night. It's really good. It's a huge step forward for them musically, sonically. Like, those guys, while not, you know, I don't want to sound like a douchebag, but it's not my thing. What they do is not my thing, but what they do very well.
They do well, and that's what matters. Sure.
Absolutely. And
I haven't listened to it yet.
And there's potential there, too. Like, these guys legitimately, with a few small tweaks, could break out. They're diverse enough that you can put them on just about any bill and they don't offend. You know what I mean? Like, they mentioned it, you know, like they've got shows coming up with Dog Fashion Disco, Green Jelly, Otherwise, and they're playing tonight in New York City with Michael Graves. That's 4 very different bands, but they don't...
They're very versatile. Their music moves around because we played with them I think they were on the bill with Shadows Fall.
Yeah.
And they're able to do all those other kinds of shows. That's great that they can do that. They can still be raw and edgy and heavy.
And the best part about that Shadows Fall show that you mentioned, was because they had played at Trespass in Oswego on that outdoor stage that we did before the main event in summer of 2012. And I mean, I've known Jay Bittner for going on 20 years at this point, and I've been friends with Brian Fair for 10 or 15 years, and you know, those guys played, and Bittner pulled me aside and was like, these guys are cool, man, like, hook me up, like, introduce me to one of these kids. And we made, you know, the connection that day. And then because everything went haywire inside at Trespass, I started asking the locals to play a second set later in the day. There were 4,000 people there, and they weren't letting anybody into the venue for 3 more hours. Why not? Yeah. You got 4,000 people standing in line, buying beers, basically pre-gaming. Why not give them a soundtrack?
Sure.
So those guys, Feeding Affliction and 9 Round, were all cool enough to play a second set. And, you know, Shadows Fall extended their set. And, you know, when Shadows Fall came back to play that show that you guys were on, you know, Bittner hit me up ahead of time and was like, yo, get that weirdo band that we played at Trespass with on the show.
Get that would be weirdo cool. Band.
Well, you got to remember that back then, like, their bass player was like this big heavyset dude that wore like corpse paint and top hats. So like he became like the visual focal point of the band. And I think now they're finally shedding that System of a Down-ish comparison that used to happen all the time. Yeah. And they're really, I think, getting into a situation where they're breaking ground the same way that Dredge did when Dredge broke, where it's derivative of something that's reminiscent to you, but still sort of breaking ground at the same time.
You got to go. You have to go through that phase though, or
the
phases.
Phase.
You know, you have to.
Yeah.
I think I'm still in an awkward phase. What's it? Puberty? I think that's what it's called.
Maybe they'll drop eventually.
But that. Everybody has to do that, you know. We sucked for a long time, and that's you have to. But like most bands, just get a different name. Yeah, you know, they'll have a different name, or but we're on the wall of shame, and we're sticking with it. You know, we're still there, and we're still, you know, we stayed up there, and now we're like, all right, let's take our picture down, and we're gonna keep rolling with it. You know, I like that. I like that we're not afraid of like what we used to be like, and that those albums are still there, you know, for people, and they still have it. It's like, we're the same essence, you know.
But by keeping that stuff public and not being ashamed of it, you're showing the growth from beginning to now.
That's what I like about it.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that, because if you're not progressing and growing as a musician, why are you doing it? Right. You know, if you're just going to be stagnant and do the same thing over and over and over again, you're just going to be Five Finger Death Punch.
Now I have to tell them contractually that you said that.
Oh, that's fine. I'll fight all 5 of them at the same time.
I'm the sixth finger.
Yeah. So where do we leave off? 7th venue. So we started doing a few shows out there on Sundays, just these multi-band and non-hardcore, because I grew up in the hardcore scene around here, and it was one of those things where that portion of the scene had already sort of been taken care of by John McKeag, and Earth Crisis at the time was touring the country, and they were on 120 Minutes. That was an MTV show.
Headbangers Ball or whatever?
No, there was a news show on CBS that I forget the name of now.
Oh.
But they were featured on that, and it was a national piece. And then, Carl was on a daytime talk show, and I don't remember if it was like Donahue or Sally Jesse Raphael or whatever the hell it was. But they were getting like big exposure, and that exposure was helping the hardcore scene here, but everybody had kind of forgotten about this alternative music scene, this rock music scene. And that's kind of where I primarily focused because, these kids that were doing these hardcore shows were set. They had Hungry Charlie's, they had the Westcott Community Center, they were doing stuff at the Lost Horizon, and it didn't seem like they really needed my help because they were self-contained. And to a degree, the hardcore scene still is relatively self-contained. I mean, a lot of the people that were there back then are still there now. John has moved on. He's teaching photography in Michigan, but like a lot of the old faces are now the people that are the senior members of the scene. And it's cool to see, almost 20 years later that these people are still persevering and helping and being part of the machine, moving things forward. So I primarily focused on the alternative scene, and that I kind of lumped in with the rock scene because at that point, rock and roll bands had kind of disappeared. You were either grungy or you were doing this sort of female-friendly mid-'90s tonic dishwalla sort of patronizing, middle-of-the-road white person thing, Dockers and boat shoes kind of music. But it was doing well.
That was a very good description.
Yeah. And it did business, you know what I mean? So, like, it was one of those situations where, like, a few weeks in, obviously, the dance club with the strip club upstairs doesn't have much of a shelf life. So that place went under, and I was introduced to Michael and Eileen Haggerty, who owned Stylene's at the time. Stylene's was on Franklin Street, where Benjamin on Franklin currently is now. It was a great space with a front bar room, a back performance room, and then an outdoor patio. And with weather permitting, you could make all three of those spaces become one.
That's
so
awesome.
It was very unique. It was very cool. You could expand it all the way to 1,000 people with the patio open. So I basically just picked up shop and moved to Stylene's and started doing these Sunday night showcases. Primarily focused around 9-Ball at the time because they were the big band. They were the band I was working with. They were the band I was focusing on. And slowly but surely, like, those shows progressed and more bands were like, oh, my God, we get to play at this cool club downtown. Like, let's get our shit together. And a lot of bands did. And it was interesting. And this is a fun side note that was brought up to me the other day is that very first show that we did, I believe it was September 19th of 1995 at Stylene's, was 9-Ball, the Buttafuoco's, and it was kind of like a dreary, rainy kind of night, and I had to run up to something. I had to go get a pack of cigarettes from the old gay bar, which is now Corner Bar.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so like I ran out.
I've never been.
To Corner Bar or the old
gay
gay bar?
I hear it's pretty gay.
Corner Bar is cool. Same dude that owns the Lost Horizon. I mean, it's not my scene, but like for a downtown bar, you know what I mean? It's one of the few that I would go to if I still drank.
That's not a gay bar?
No.
Oh, okay. I was trying to make a funny joke.
Oh no! Work. Back in the day,
thinking of Trex.
Yes. back in the day, that corner that has Corner Bar and King of Clubs and Daisy Dukes, where Corner Bar is, we used to call it the OGB. It was the nameless bar downtown, and we used to call it the OGB because that's where all the old gay guys hung out.
Right.
Nothing against that, by the way. Like, you're free to do what you want. I don't give a shit. Like, you like dudes, be with dudes. Just do it over there.
That's fine.
No issue with it whatsoever. But it was the only place downtown that still had a cigarette machine. So I ran down there to get a pack of cigarettes, and on my way back, there's this young girl sitting out in front of what's now Starbucks, sitting on a bench, like, trying to busk. And it's raining, and there's nobody there, and she just looked sad. And I was like, listen, why don't you just come and hang out? Like, play me a song inside the bar, and if it's good, I'll put you on stage tonight because I don't have a third act. And she did, and I was just like, all right, cool. And it turns out it was Ashley Cox. Who has gone on to many things. You know, she's involved in a lot of projects. Currently has a band called Professional Victims that just dropped a record that's actually really, really cool. One of my favorite things of 2015. So that was weird because I had completely and totally forgotten about that until somebody had mentioned, like, didn't you give Ashley Cox her first show? And I was just like, I don't think so. And then somebody recanted the story, and I was like, oh, yeah. So that was kind of cool, you know? Like, she kind of started the same time I did, and we've both progressed through this thing to where we are today. But the Stylene's thing was great because Mike and Eileen are the 2 of 3 total bar owners that I've worked for that weren't drug addicts or scumbags or trying to fuck you over financially for their own gain. They were like-minded like I was, where like as long as we make enough money to subsist, let's keep doing this and opening our doors for these musicians because they don't really have anywhere else. Because at the time, Lost Horizon was a heavy metal bar. It was hardcore shows. It wasn't the place to do what I wanted to do, which was give these more artistic, expressive bands a stage to play on. And I had that downtown. And this was before Armory Square was called Armory Square. It was just a bar on Franklin Street, and it was across from Possibilities because it was owned by the same family. So it was Possibilities that kind of got the ball rolling on Armory Square becoming what it was, and then Stylene's becoming popular, really picked that ball up, ran with it, and then you saw Armory Square explode. After doing 2 years of those Sunday night showcases, I won a Sammy Award for Best Music Series, which, in the grand scheme of things, nothing against the Sammys. It was just it was cool, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
These days and age, everybody gets a trophy for participating. Back then it actually kind of, it was cool, like it proved, and I'll stand by this, and as generic as it is, there's no way that you can prove me wrong. Hard work pays off, no matter what situation you're in, whether it's the music industry or your job or the gym or whatever it is that you're doing. The more you do it, the better you're going to be at it. Like there's always going to be progress. If you work hard, in the end, it will eventually pay off. Maybe not financially, but you can always achieve your goals if you try hard enough to do so.
Depends on what the payoff is.
Exactly.
That's how you define payoff.
Right. So won the award. Everything took off from there. I mean, we were doing an average of like 200 to 300 people on average on a Sunday night.
This is at Stylene's?
At Stylene's for doors at 9 and music that ran until 2 a.m.
on a Sunday night? That's awesome.
And we kept that momentum that entire time. And then in 1998, we used to do disco every Thursday with the Electric Chick Magnets, which morphed into the United Booty Foundation. And then Friday nights we would book blues bands, and Saturdays was Little Georgie and the Shuffling Hungarians, which was this big, like anywhere from 9 to 14 piece New Orleans style blues Zydeco thing. And it was fantastic. It was fun, man. It was not necessarily my thing, but it was impressive to watch that band show up every week, pull it off, and do a different set. It was almost like a residency, so to speak. You got the same 4 or 5 songs every week, but you never knew when they were coming. You never knew what the instrumentation was. You never knew who was going to show up and jam with the band. It was a cool time. And then Sundays we did these alternative shows, and then we lost the disco thing, and we're thinking, like, what do we do on Thursdays? What do we do on Thursdays? And we tried an 80s thing, and that failed. And we tried like an open mic, and that failed. And Michael and Eileen were like, fuck it, dude. Like, the Sundays are great. Thursdays can be good, too. Just do Thursdays and Sundays and, do the heavier stuff, because at that point, we had moved into the realm of Korn and the Deftones and sort of that era of butt rock breaking. So, like, the Thursdays were more of, like, the strummy, Guys and Dockers sort of bands, and the Sundays stayed relatively heavy, and they both just kind of broke open. And now I had 2 nights. And then, everybody likes to say Syracuse has always been a blues town, and it has, but there got to a point late 98, early 99, where, like, now you had Shifties doing it for free 5 nights a week. You had the Dinosaur doing it for free 7 nights a week. You had all these little bars that were giving away the blues all the time. So my Friday nights got to a point where there was no point in doing them anymore. So now the bigger bands from the Thursdays and the Sundays were now headlining Friday nights in the room. And then the Thursdays and Sundays became sort of the minor leagues, the stomping grounds, the proving grounds to get yourself a headlining gig or onto one of those weekend night bills. And all of that legitimately goes back to a band called Jameis Breed. They were...
For all those of you who are too young to...
Jameis Breed was a bunch of kids from, around the north of 49 area, Central Square Parish, up where I live now. And it was post-Korn, I guess is the best way to put it. It was 2 vocals, and it was dissonant and angular and angry, and had a rhythmic feel to it, much like Korn. As much as I don't want to talk a bunch of shit about that era, I mean... music was pretty dumb for a little while there with the Limp Bizkits and all that rap rock and everything else. But these guys sort of skirted that by having the ability, because, I mean, they would play with bands that sounded like that, but they also got invited to play with Earth Crisis a couple times. So there was an edge and an
They
honesty.
were the one step from falling of that
era. To a degree. But you're also talking about a band that would bring 500 people out on a Sunday night when they started at 12:30 in the morning and played till 2. So, like...
It was definitely different back then, though, too. I have some questions about that we'll get into.
Those guys actually were the ones that broke through that wall and started getting local, original, heavier rock bands headlining gigs in what at the time was the Real Deal Club in town.
Yeah. So Stylines was that was the platform. You had
hub.
the Lost Horizon, but you were like sort of the platform E to all of that, right? You were getting these people...
Absolutely.
Giving people somewhere to play besides their own garage that was like, hey, let's test this out. Let's, And people still came because they knew the venue. So...
Well, it wasn't. I think part of it was the venue. I think part of it was, hey, man, let's go downtown. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, when the weather's nice, the patio's open, we can sit out there, we can check out some music.
Sounds like a great location.
The cover was always cheap. I tried to keep it around $5 as much as I could. Drinks were always cheap. And you knew that I wasn't going to put some half-assed band on stage. And if I did, it was always at like 1 o'clock in the morning, like, oh, hey, the headliner, it was like the deadliner spot. So that if, and then there were nights that you would intentionally put that band in that deadliner spot because you wanted to actually be out of the bar at 2:15 and not at 3:15.
We've played the deadliner spot.
We all have, man.
Oh, yeah.
It's never a good time. So, Stylines went along really well. And then, as the Bush administration, came back into effect, the economy, of course, took a giant shit on all of us. And, money for the arts went away, and then you saw people supporting music less and less, and, Mike and Eileen, had to get out from underneath it. At that point, the club stopped being profitable, and I don't hold it against them at all. Like, they're a generation ahead of me, so, like, when you're at that age and you have to make a decision for your future, I'm never going to hold that against you. So they sold it off to two clowns that turned it into Armory High, which was my concept. And I liked it. It was, for me, it was an homage to Coney Island High in New York City, which got closed right around the same time we changed. And Coney Island High never had the theme that we had with Armory High. It was just the name, but it was one of my favorite places to go and see shows in New York City. I traveled down there a lot to see a lot of bands and played there a few times, and the people that ran that club deserved better than they got. And I'll say that about the Wetlands in New York City as well. So that was sort of my homage. This is going to be Armory High, and we've been here now nearly 10 years, and we're going to celebrate what we've created here. So we made a mural for the wall in the front, and we had caricatures painted on the wall of all the musicians that made that room what it was. The Jameis Breeds, the Little Georgies, the Electric Chick Magnets, the Sugar Highs, all these bands that really cut their teeth there and did great business for me and the club and the scene, all got sort of immortalized on the wall. And I was in it too, which I didn't like, but it happened. And those guys were just
humble.
The couple that bought it were just awful at running it. It's in pro wrestling terminology, they were battling their demons, which in most cases, when you hear that phrase, is cocaine.
Okay, gotcha.
These days, I think it may lean itself more towards heroin. But
the heroin wrestler couldn't run a club.
No. It was bad. It was so bad that I used to have to hide their money from them.
Jesus.
You know what I mean? I punched a hole out in the wall behind the file cabinet, and I would hide money in it because I would know I needed to get beer for the next weekend. Because any money that I would put in the safe just went up their nose.
You're like their unofficial financial advisor.
Basically,
involuntary advisor.
It got to a point where I didn't give a fuck about them anymore, but I knew that I didn't have another room to go into.
Right, and you had to keep
it alive.
I
had 11 employees that relied on that source of income.
Sure.
So I did what I had to do to keep that venue running for as long as it could. So it got to a point where they were just lost, just completely and totally lost. And I suggested to them that maybe they get out from underneath it, that maybe this business isn't for you. I don't want to buy it. I can't buy it. I can't get a liquor license in New York State because I have multiple violent felonies on my record. Yeah.
Is that why there's glass between us right here?
It's why I have scars all over my hands and head, but it's dumb stuff. We all do stupid shit when we're kids, and unfortunately, I did it just past the point where it could end up being expunged when I turned 18, because 4 days after my 18th birthday, I caved some dude's face in outside Hungry Charlie's that was beating his girlfriend up.
Oh.
And, it was one of those situations where had she pressed charges, he wouldn't have been able to press charges against me, but we all know that cycle of abuse is never a good thing. But,
sure.
So I got stuck with some charges that I was never able to get rid of because
Wow.
I caused some pretty physical damage to another human being, and he deserved it, but, it is what it is. So with me not being able to get a liquor license, I'm never going to put anybody in my family or anybody that I consider close to me in my life in jeopardy of potentially losing everything they have over a bar.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a point where, we all know that DIY venue that doesn't serve alcohol. It's why nobody really knows about that DIY venue that doesn't serve alcohol. It's cool for a show every now and then, but it's nothing that's going to do business on a regular basis.
Right.
So they sold it to another cokehead from Oswego, and that dude, basically, I knew he was a piece of shit from the minute I met him, and I knew that it wasn't going to last long. So we took 2 months off. I went out on the road with Sum 41, tour managing for a little bit, took a trip to Europe with the Bloodhound Gang, came back to a shiny new shit box of a club. And I had booked a few things while I was on the road for a grand opening weekend and the second weekend, and I knew that it wasn't going to last longer than that. At least my relationship with this douchebag wasn't going to last that long. So we got through those first 2 weekends, and then after I'd gotten home from Europe, I basically decided, I need to set up a new base of operations. So we started putting the smaller stuff into Planet 505, which I don't even know what the hell that is now. It was a sushi place for a little while, and now I think Munjed's moved over there.
I don't know. I don't know what
Not
it is
100%
now.
sure. I know Alto Cinco took over the original Munjed space next to the Westcott Theater, and I'm pretty sure Munjed's just moved across the street into the 505 space. And then an opportunity arose to go back to the original venue I started in, which was called 7th Venue. Talked to those guys. They owned the old American Dream Girls strip club on Bruce Street, right off of Erie Boulevard between Teal and Midler. And I didn't get a great feeling about these guys, but man, did I love that room. Giant A-frame, held 1,100 people, big stage. And at the time, it was a boom period, man. Matt Dunn had just started, really coming into his own as far as booking shows. And, I was able to bring in a lot of stuff that was popular at the time. And radio was big at the time as well, in getting bands into town. This was, just the start of that radio war between 95X and the douchebags on Walton Street. So, I went into that apprehensive but hopeful, and then after a few months realized that, these are strip club owners. They're trying to run this like a strip club. Like $7 beers don't work, I'm not going to, and then it was awkward,
Right.
They would bring the strippers over to bartend, and nobody that came to my shows could get a drink because these girls weren't bartenders. They were dancers. So
I don't know how to pour it.
Yeah.
I just stick my tits in your face.
Basically.
Yeah.
And, and then what I explained to them was, I was like, all right, cool, let's get, a couple of those girls to walk around with shots. They can mingle. They can still, be strippers that are selling drinks, but let's put some real bartenders behind the bar. And then it got really ugly because they got really greedy and they thought they weren't making enough and whatever else. So that situation imploded, and then Matt and I at the time just basically picked up and moved everything to 505. So if you can imagine a room, I'm trying to think of like a current location to think of, but if we all kind of remember the furnace, right?
Yeah.
All right, so you remember the front
Zach,
room at
you
the
don't remember.
furnace?
Zach's on here too. I didn't say it. The furnace was it was an extension of a church.
The Vineyard
in
Brotherhood
Lakeland.
in Lakeland.
Yeah.
So that room was essentially 2 rooms. So for those of you that remember the furnace, if you walked into that first room where the couches and the games were, put a half wall all the way down the middle of the room, long ways.
Sure.
And then the bands would play on one side, the bar was on the other. This was a small space that if on a good day and there weren't too many guys my size there, you could put 500 people in there.
Okay.
It was uncomfortable as shit, and it was really unsafe, but we did it. So a room that shouldn't have any more than 350 people in it did Killswitch Engage and Shadows Fall on back-to-back nights. We did.
I remember
Glassjaw
seeing
in
the
that
flyer
room.
for that.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really like into that stuff at that point. I had gotten into it after. That's the worst part, is when you get into something, I was still like, I was really young. So like when I finally got into it, I like saw that it happened and I'm like, when is this? And it was like last year. And I just see this bill that like is magical to me, and it's old,
Yeah, it's one of those things that I look back on very fondly. I mean, I don't care for a lot of that music, and I think a lot of people around your age are going to look back at that early 2000s, like Orange County, California hardcore scene the same way guys my age look back at their 80s hair metal experience.
Yeah.
Because I actually, like, back then, coming out of that, I actually realized that there were a lot of similarities. It was bad fashion, bad hair, and manufactured music. And
it's only bad when you have time after that for people to come out of the, and analyze it, and they go, holy shit. When you put time in what we're doing right now, how we look is bad. It's going to be bad. I know it's going to be bad at some point.
For the most part, I feel like I've looked exactly the same in pretty much my entire life.
You stay consistent, which I have a respect level for that, but who knows? There could... We're
there's terrible pictures of me from way back in the day, man. But like,
I just had to renew my passport. I look like I'm illegal, like an illegal immigrant. Like I had like a mullet by accident, just neglected haircut.
Every picture of me on every form of identification I've ever had looks like a prison photo.
It's the young people, really. It's that, like,
to a degree, but
those are the people that
think about
will come out. Like the Furnace didn't serve alcohol.
No. But again, that was a situation where that music appealed to a certain demographic that wasn't old enough to drink anyway. So they're going to come consistently anyways, but there's no additional source of revenue beyond ticket sales.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to trust in the show entirely.
Exactly. And when you're, and I don't know, maybe I'm the only guy that's in this situation, but like I've been the dude on stage. I've been the guy that tour managed and had to settle. I've been the dude on the other side of that settlement as a promoter. I've run a bar. I've run a venue. So I've kind of been in every situation that you can be in. So I always try my hardest to make sure that no matter what perspective I'm coming from to that situation, that I take everybody else's experience into account, because I've had to be in everybody's shoes, So like I try and hook as many people up with whatever I can when I can, So like, obviously, I don't own the Lost Horizon, but I try and make that experience as comfortable for everybody as possible. And, it's not the 90s anymore, so it's not like every band gets a free case of beer, but we try and take care of them and give them the hospitality that we can. And the bands that make us money obviously get treated really, really well upon their return. And, it's that situation, it's like, for every person out there that loves me because of how much I've helped them or helped the scene, there's probably 5 dudes that hate me, and that's not probably. There definitely is, and it's just, I don't care. It boils down to the fact that, like, and I don't want to come off like egotistical in any way, because by no means do I think that this couldn't happen without me, because it definitely could. It would just run completely differently is all. But for me, it's like, all right, so I have the ability to play your music on the radio. I have the ability to put you on shows, and I'm going to do that, and I will give everybody their fair opportunity to. But understand that there are hundreds of bands in this city, which means that there are thousands of dudes just like you, and if you don't stay top of mind with me, I'm going to forget. If you aren't that band that brings me 200 people every time you play, or that guy that hits me up, every couple of weeks to just say, hey, man, this is what we're doing, blah, 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 you're going to fall off my radar. I'm going to forget about you. My favorite thing in the entire fucking world are bands that shit talk me because I don't play their music on the air. And it's just like, okay, did you send me the record? No. Okay. It's a submission-based format, right? The FCC makes me keep a hard copy of every single fucking thing I play on premise. So, like, I can't, like, you guys can't send me an MP3 and I can air it on the air. I have to have a hard copy literally sitting on a shelf in my office in order for it to make the air. So, like, to have the audacity to think that somebody with a full-time job in radio that's doing you a favor by playing your shitty local band on the fucking radio, you can't get off your ass and bring me or mail me a CD. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to sound like a douchebag, but how fucking hard is that? You know, especially when it's right on the website, it's on the Facebook page.
Right.
This is a submission-based local music radio show. In order to be played, you must submit your record to, and it has my name and the address of the building and everything else. It's not that fucking hard to figure out. So if you want to get played, I have to have the music. And it's hilarious to me how many bands will just talk a bunch of shit to talk a bunch of shit and not really understand how it works. You know, I'm in a corporate position. I mean, this isn't internet radio. This isn't like some shit at some college that only plays in the buildings that you walk through. We have 50,000 watts behind us and 80,000 listeners a week. Like, I'm not going to sacrifice my position in that machine so that your band gets 3 minutes of airplay.
Right.
I'm not going to break the rules, you know what I mean? Because I'm going to break the rules for one band and then 99 other bands have to suffer.
All right.
Not worth it.
Well, after a lot of shit talk from us, we're very grateful that you played our song, shitty local song on the radio.
No,
we appreciate
it's not a
that.
matter of that because I genuinely, I love our local music scene.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And I love the people associated with it. But, you know, let's call a spade here. Not everybody's breaking new ground. Not everybody's, you know, fucking doing something of value.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it really boils down to the fact for me that the stuff that connects with me, the stuff that I get behind in our local music scene is the stuff that really proves to me that you have an artistic voice. You're not just aping your favorite band and being a derivative copy of a copy. We've all seen the movie Multiplicity, right?
No.
With Michael Keaton, where he genetically makes a clone of himself.
Oh, okay. Maybe I have seen that.
So there's a line from that movie that I tell everybody all the time, which is a copy of a copy is never as sharp as the original. Mm-hmm. So if you're copying a band that is copying another band, you know what I mean? Like, you're now diluting.
You're a fountain drink version of that band.
Yeah, essentially.
Sure.
And maybe that's the most consumable way to do it, but to me, there's no heart, there's no soul, there's nothing to grab onto. There's nothing. If it doesn't emote something within you, me being the guy on the air that's playing your song, I would rather not play your music and sound like a douchebag. Like, oh, here's this on 95X. I want to be excited. I want to play like you. I refuse to be fake. You know, I guess that's really what it boils down to. And I've told everybody, like, hey, what'd you think of our new record? Hey, man, it's much better than your last one. It's not really my cup of tea, but I see where you guys are going. And I appreciate what you're doing, and I'll give it a spin. I don't think there's anything negative in that whatsoever. All art is interpreted by the person consuming it. And truthfully, I'm 42 years old. These kids aren't making music for me. I don't need to like it to play it, but it needs to be good. I need to know after listening to it that it's an honest representation of who you are and what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And to me, that equals me getting excited and playing it on the air.
Yeah.
You know, like, it's really across the board, you know? Like, if I only played the stuff I liked, you'd hear the same 3 songs every week on repeat. You know what I mean? Like, it's difficult for people to understand that, like, I am a radio professional, as awful as that is to say out loud. But, like, I've been doing this for a decade. Like, my ears are trained to know what a hook is, what works, and what doesn't work.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like, I feel like now I have this secondary skill set beyond promoting music and being a fan of music.
Sure.
And for the bands that really want it and still want to pursue that fucking record label deal that is worthless in this day and age.
We stopped pursuing that.
You know, like, I give my honest advice.
Yeah.
You know, oh, here's our new single. Well, you should really take this part out because it doesn't do anything. And, you know, like, there's no definitive hook. And I'm not going to name names, but I was given a CD late last year by a band that asked me to give them an honest assessment of what the record was because they had changed their style enough that they were going to become a radio version of what they were doing. No harm, no foul. If that's what you want to do and you can do it in an honest manner, by all means, I support you. And I got this record, and it just 9 songs, no hooks, not a single fucking thing that after playing through the record that I could remember.
Huh.
You know, and it's
what was it like? Was each song its own kind of middle of the road mediocre thing, or was it
there was nothing mediocre about this record. There was nothing mediocre about this record. Had I not gotten the spiel before I'd gotten the record that we made an attempt to make this radio friendly, then I would have just taken the record and been like, oh, this is really cool, man. Like, I dig this. But when you tell me that you're going in a certain direction and then veer completely off path, like, understand that if you want nationwide regular airplay, that it needs to either be anthemic or hooky. One of those two things needs to happen, because the Mars Volta is one of my favorite bands in the entire world.
Nice.
And how often do you ever hear it on the radio? You don't.
Yeah.
They had one track, The Widow, that made it to radio in 2005 or 2006. And It was very brief, and it was only because that song was reminiscent of a Led Zeppelin ballad. Only reason that fucking song made it to air. And it was very brief, and I think they got 3 weeks of airplay at my old radio station, and nobody else touched it. And that's the entire blip on the radar that the Mars Volta was. Does that mean that I don't love listening to the records? Not at all. I love the Mars Volta, but I know that in a commercial radio world that the Mars Volta is not a part of that dialect.
They're wacky.
Yeah.
Actually, though, the original drummer is a college professor at the school that we went to.
Oh, no shit.
Blake Fleming. Guy's amazing.
Absolutely.
Still putting out stuff. He's putting out he has like a all percussive record on vinyl.
That's killer.
An all percussive record on record. I should say that. I know it's just an expression now, but yeah.
Yeah, it's super annoying. Like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I've had records since I was a little kid, and I understand that it's like the cool thing now. But these actual vinyl snobs, I want to punch them all square in the mouth, because it's just
my buddy has a family member that's like, she's like whatever, it's still a teenager, and she has a vinyl collection and no record player. Because it's like the whole indie,
it's like the cool thing.
Yeah, collect these records and
it's the same douchebag every time. It's the guy with the ironic mustache and the stupid hat. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, like, have you ever heard of this band? Oh, I didn't think so. Fuck you. You know what I mean? Like, I don't give a shit about your fucking weird band that sounds exactly like Deer Hunter. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you found a cooler version of Deer Hunter? No, you didn't. You didn't. You found some band that heard Deer Hunter and then wrote a fucking record. Like, suck it up, man. Like, you're not as cool as you think you are. Like, shave that shit off your face and take the dumb hat off. Like, you look like an idiot. Like, it's a fucking culture of 20-year-old kids that want to be 50. And I get, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, you're trying to be different. You're trying to express yourself. You're not. You know what I mean? You're just another copy of a copy.
Right.
Like, do your thing. Do you. And I get it, man. I wasn't completely self-aware at that age either. You know what I mean? So this is bitter old dude, you know, like.
That's fine.
But by the same token,
can relate
it's just
to that.
like, it's harder for me now because I know people that are approaching my age, and I'm, again, not going to name names, but they know who they are, that need to understand that, like, time passes and we age for a reason. And for me, that reason is so that you can become self-aware and try and figure out who you are so that the second half of your life is going to be better than the first half of your life. And for those people that don't have that self-awareness, that just continually try and keep up with the times, dude, you're 40. Skinny jeans aren't for you. Maybe you should take the guy liner off and just find at the core who you are and be that guy. Because I know skinny jeans aren't comfortable, man. Like, you've got your balls tucked back in an uncomfortable spot. And you know what I mean? Like, you're spending more time and effort to get ready to go out than I spend in a week. You know what I mean? Like,
well, they're self-aware in a sense that they're making you self-aware of where their nut geography is by
to a degree,
giving you like a visual display of it.
But for me, I don't know. It just sucks. Like, the people that I surround myself with, that I give my time to as friends, because I don't have a lot of actual blood family. Long convoluted story, but I basically have 2 blood relatives, period, end of story. So I've never really had family, and emancipating myself at an early age, a lot of that went away. So for me, a lot of the people that I call family are just really longtime friends, and I would do absolutely anything for them. But I find that I surround myself, even in situations outside of that close circle of people, with people that are like-minded, people that don't have pretenses, people that don't put up these sort of walls. You know what I mean? It's just like, and I get the psychology of it, and that wall's there because you're trying to like get through something or something traumatic happened to you. But like by the same token, you know, maybe letting some people in and getting a different perspective can help you cope or deal or move past that thing that's making that wall stand up. Or, you know, it's that narcissistic person that we it's the girl that has to get on stage and dance while the band is playing.
Yep.
It's like, bitch, I bought a ticket not to see you. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and it's
You're
just,
supposed to be bartending, stripper. Get back there.
yeah. Or like you know, it's also like that whole like show off stage dive culture that's happened since the early 2000s, where it's like you took something that was very pure, an expression of somebody's feelings at the time, and now you're doing it to be ironic, and it's not. It's making you look like a douchebag, and you're probably gonna hurt yourself. So how about we just stop? And, you know, we can all just watch this band, because I think we all bought a ticket to see this band.
Yep.
And not you run across the stage, land on your head, and get carted out of here on a fucking stretcher. You know, I get that it's part of some certain cultures, but when it's being stopped on a national level, like Warped Tour and all of the Rockstar tours like Mayhem and Uproar, and it's going to get to a degree where crowd surfing is not going to be allowed anymore either. It's dangerous. And
Absolutely.
I get it. It had its time. It had its place. And that time and place is fucking over. With the advent of technology in a sue-happy society, there's no reason to even think about doing it, because as it stands, somebody's going to get hurt, and then somebody's going to sue you, the band, the promoter, the security, and it turns into this whole debacle where the venue gets shut down because some asshole had to peacock for 15 seconds because his ego wasn't getting stroked while the band he paid $20 to see was playing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, did I ever do it? Of course I fucking did.
I did it once. Hardcore. I almost broke my arm.
Right.
I was done with that.
You know, but like, I understand that there was a time and a place for things, but I also have that mindset that things grow and develop and things change. You know, and I think that's the biggest thing that's missing from the younger portion of our society, and I think they're called millennials now, is the term.
Yeah, sounds like a florist term.
Because you can't live in America without labeling stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Walmart. But it's just disheartening because as society's moved forward from, you know, me being a kid to kids today, like, it's just, we're raising a bunch of soft-ass motherfuckers that are going to have to take care of me in 30 years when I retire and I'm all fucking old and crippled and shit, and I don't have any faith in that. I genuinely don't have any faith in the future of our country based on these young kids today. Their terrible
it's
taste
scary.
in everything and their inability to deal with real life. Like I said earlier, like, everybody gets a trophy. Everybody, you know, it's just like Little League. My nephew's Little League, they're not 5, they're 11, and you basically stay at bat until you make contact with the ball. What happened to 3 strikes, you're out? Isn't that like a common saying? Like,
right.
Give the kid, manage that kid's fucking expectations, because when he gets out into the real world, nobody's going to give him a chance to swing until he
skills.
hits.
It's not. That's not like over competition. There's sportsmanship, and then there's coping skills with that. And
well, let's take
that's
a
why
look.
we put him in sports anyways, right?
Let's use baseball as that analogy, because the good players are only good at best 30% of the time.
Yeah.
So you're teaching this kid that like 30% isn't good enough when there's hundreds of guys making millions of dollars a year only being good 30% of the time.
Yeah.
You're setting an unreasonable expectation for a kid that now is going to grow into this entitled, bratty, fucking awful thing that we all have to deal with later in life.
Yeah.
And it's already starting to happen because the first crop of those internet-dependent, soft-ass people are now coming of age. You know, and I went on a Facebook rant, which I have a tendency to do.
Oh, I love your rants.
A couple of weeks ago, but it's like I am sick to death of these young people who make idle threats and talk shit on social media, and then you confront them in real life and they piss themselves.
Yeah.
And I get that not everybody is a scary-looking maniac like me, but the fact of the matter is if you don't defend yourself, your point of view, and sort of your honor in a weird way, by confronting these people, like, you're letting them win. And obviously, I've done security for 22 years. I am well-versed in jiu-jitsu and judo. And like I said, I have scars on my hands, and they're not from fucking knitting. I don't have a problem being up in your face once you've said something disrespectful and crossed a line. I don't give a fuck who you are. I don't care how big you are, how small you are. You're getting called out because you did something dumb.
Right.
So the best thing for you to do is learn from the experience, apologize, and stop fucking doing it.
Yeah.
Because there's so many internet cowboys out there.
It's not about the physical lesson teaching. It's really just a mere conversation. Like, hey man, that like I'm trying to talk to you like a human being does. Let's just talk this out. That wasn't right. And they don't really have a leg to stand on because they were the ones that were talking.
It's not even so much that.
It's
they fear the actual confrontation because at this point, nobody actually physically interacts with one another. It's text messaging and instant messenger and Facebook chat and all this other thing. And I'm guilty of it too. I can't remember the last time I talked on the phone.
Yeah, we're all guilty of it. Yeah,
hate it. You know what I mean? Like, I will ignore a call and then text that person, be like, "Yo, what's up?" And I'm trying to break myself of that.
But you're aware of it though.
Yeah.
And that's the fear is that like the people that are the AD or AI after internet or if you have those people, that awareness is not there unless you have the parentals that are instilling that in them. You have people that are actually bringing them to reality, like, hey, this is not, I know this is a world that you live in, but that is not the real world.
Yeah. And to me too is it's a lot of these people that have young children are what I like to call first waivers of that technological advance. And it's difficult to sit and watch in a lot of situations because they also have that entitlement, but they don't have it for themselves. They just think their kid should have every opportunity. And it's like, listen, not everybody's going to be a doctor, not everybody's going to be a lawyer, not everybody's going to be a virtuoso. And as callous as it is to say, like, what happens when the world runs out of qualified people to be garbage men and fast food employees? Like, those jobs need to be filled, and not everybody's qualified for those upper echelon jobs. And I'm sorry that you think your kid is the greatest thing in the entire world, but I'm here to tell you he's not. And you should manage your expectations and his before you both end up abusing the system for the rest of your lives because nothing is good enough, and now you're taking my tax money. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To support yourselves. Right. Like, it's very important to me for the future of the society that we have here and the freedoms that we have, that people start to manage these expectations, because if they don't, the society as a whole is going to crumble. And that's what we're already starting to see with, it's 2015. Why is there still racial tension? Why are people still like insisting that gay guys and girls can't get married? You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure America was founded on freedoms, and it had nothing to do with what
dated traditions.
Yeah, like
dated traditions.
It didn't matter which invisible guy in the sky you bowed down to. Like, we're here because we wanted to get out of the monarchy of England, and we came here to have the freedom to do what we want. And here we are, how many hundreds of years later, still telling people what they can and can't do, and it's not based on anything other than these other people's belief systems.
Yep.
And like
dated traditions.
It's very difficult for me, like, you know, like it's that rebel in me. You know what I mean? Like, there was a time in my life where I refused to say the Pledge of Allegiance in school because I was forced to do it. So you rebel against that.
Right.
And it's not that I had any less respect for our country, but like, I don't feel like this belongs in our schools. You either are patriotic or you are not. You can't force somebody to be that way. And if you do force them, it's going to cause resentment, which down the road is going to keep them from doing what you ultimately want them to do. And I was always that person that when they were like, oh, let's bow our heads for a moment of silence for something, I would get up and I would leave the room because I don't believe in it. You know what I mean? Like, it's difficult to to understand that a 16 or a 17-year-old kid has figured out that he is atheist and doesn't have the same belief system as you. So, you know, I got suspended from school for doing that a couple of different times. And it's like, what gives you the right to do that? Like, you have your beliefs, I have mine. I think, you know, based on the fact that we're standing here in America, that I have the right to not participate in something that you're forcing. You're forcing your religion.
But you're shunned from it. You're exiled from it for the reason that the majority of what is believed in, the majority of people that follow a certain suit, they feel that that's not right because, you know, you're the minority in that, you know, in how you feel. So it's like the majority, hey, well, oh, that's strange. But if it was the other way around, it would be the same in the same sense, you know. So that, I don't know. It just seems like you're looked down upon for that. People probably thought that's, you know, oh, he's not going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. That's, you know, they're not taking it as like, oh, it's not that I don't respect our country or whatever. Well, that's how they see it.
Yeah,
you know, that's how they're going to view that.
It's hard to break old traditions. I refer to it as the old boys club, and it doesn't matter what segment of society you're in, there's always going to be that.
Yeah.
Because I play in a multitude of cover bands. I do a Rage Against the Machine tribute. I've got a little fun band called Dome. You know what I mean? We play songs nobody else plays, and it's because I'm old and I'm jaded, and I have no aspirations to do anything with music other than to have fun with my friends. That's all I want to do. I want to make music.
But that's how it starts.
Yeah. But man, it's Syracuse cover band syndrome. Everybody thinks they're a fucking rock star the same way everybody thinks they're a promoter. And it's like, look, dude, like, if you can't understand your lot in life, which is I go to this bar once a month and I play somebody else's music, to have an ego about that, to me, is bullshit. I'm sorry. Like, there's no ego in what I do. You know, musically, like, I genuinely like to make noise with my friends, and it's way easier to email 3 guys a list of songs to learn and get together every Tuesday night for a couple of hours and just bang it out and then go have fun. You invite your friends, it's a fucking party. How can you not have fun with that?
Right.
But these guys that take it so seriously, like, oh, dude, I gotta buy some new stage clothes. The fuck are stage clothes? Like, I put this shit on this morning.
We kind of have
now.
We kind of have a dress code.
I don't feel like there's a difference between
no band names, no brand names, because we don't want people to prejudge us when we're wearing some shit. You know, that's really it.
But that's not like we need to go. Dude, here's what we're gonna do, okay? Like
I do kind of sound like that when I'm.
But it's just it's that mentality of like, oh, dude, like
I hear you,
and it's cool because you want your band to look like a band.
Yeah.
So you know it's
got to feel like a band too.
You got to find that comfortable middle ground where you're not wearing eyeliner and matching outfits, but you're also not wearing cargo shorts and a Nike T-shirt and Birkenstocks on stage. You know what I mean?
To me, it's counterproductive because the whole goal is that you're to be taken seriously. But like you said, finding that middle ground, if you step over that, it's almost like you see that up there and you... You know, like you're lighting off sparklers for pyro, and you're like, okay.
There's a couple of bands in town that I'll name by name that I think do it right. One of which is How to Disappear Completely. It's very simple. It's black on
Kyle
black.
Heath. Yeah. Shout out.
It's black on black.
Yeah, I like
but
that.
It's not obvious, and you know that they belong together on stage, and it's not everybody in black jeans and a black button down or black jeans and a black T-shirt. Everybody has their own interpretation in that band, but it's always black on black.
Yeah. It reflects the style, and it unifies them. That's the goal, and it works.
And Falling From One, which is a band from out Utica way, does it in a pretty unique way, too, where they don't necessarily all match, but there's a theme, and they stick to it,
Gotcha.
and it works. You know what I mean? It's not over the top. It's not blatantly obvious, but it's a subtle little thing that gives the band an image. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. But then there's the other side of that, which is like, hey, man, we're a serious band, but I'm wearing flip-flops and, you know, these cargo shorts and, you know, like a Labatt Blue T-shirt I got for free at the bar last week. Let's fucking party. No, man, like, it's not the Wolf Inn anymore, man. Like, I'm giving you a legitimate stage and a state-of-the-art PA to play through, like, show a little bit of respect to it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not asking you to dress up or be somebody who you're not, but you could put a little bit of effort into it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't book dad rock, so don't show up looking like you're going to play dad rock.
Right. So, I'm going to give you a double question. What time do you want to close this out?
I have to be at the Lost by 4, so
By 4,
3:45.
okay. So we'll try to be, because I do have a few questions. Some of it we've already
What
covered.
time is it now?
It's 2:45. And
we got plenty of time.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of condense like.
Because I can talk for hours, just so you know.
Oh yeah, us too, dude. I that's the thing, is that I've spoken with you on sort of a 5-minute incremental basis, like going like in between shows, and if I show I'm going to or playing at that you're a part of, I've only really spoken to you for 5 minutes, no more. And I'm like, I gotta do a fucking podcast with this guy, because all we've been doing is just talking shit as a band. Like, okay, this is why it's so hard to sell tickets. What the hell? Like, we have all these questions, and I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy. He's a nice guy. I want to talk to him. His scars on his hands, they're not from knitting. Like,
true enough.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask.
Let's do the Q&A portion.
What's that?
Let's do the Q&A portion.
Yes.
Enough of the old guy rambling.
Okay, so it's a little two-parter thing here, and we were talking about cover bands. Why does that cover band at the bar draw 10 times more than that serious local band? And it's not the cover band like you're talking like the band that plays at Coleman's, and people are just there anyways because it's Coleman's. It's not that they're there to be part of the entertainment. It's that they're the entertainment. Like you have the cover band and people are going out to see it. Why does it seem like they draw so much more than the serious local band?
Why do more people go to Olive Garden than they do Angotti's? It's a name brand, man.
Yeah.
You know what you're getting when you walk in the door. You know that band plays all the songs that are on the radio and that have been on the radio for years, and there's no way that you're not going to like it, because that's what it is. It's the same way Olive Garden makes Italian food.
Right.
There's air quotes going on right now. It's not Italian food. It is
free breadsticks.
It is an amalgamated version of what Americans think Italian food is, but they've been beaten over the head with this red sauce theory for so long that that's what Italian food is.
Yeah.
That I'm going to go get that because it's all you can eat pasta for $10 and it's going to be great. But nobody's willing to take that risk to go to that new Italian restaurant that happens to be in the city, because you don't know what you're going to get, because it's somebody else's interpretation of what Italian food is. And I think that's the same thing with music.
Yeah.
And part of it too, and this is in absolutely, not meant in an offensive way at all. Like, cover bands are typically where the party people go. That's where the people that have a tendency to drink a little too much and maybe indulge in drugs that aren't green congregate. Like, a lot of people don't want to let go of their youth, and a lot of times it's way easier to just be drunk and coked out of your mind and listening to a live version of the radio.
Right.
And I think there are some bands that maybe make all of those things a little too easy to partake in, and that's why they're successful. But I also think it's a matter of, again, the Walmartization of America. It's all about name brands and knowing what you're getting going in, and people not being risk takers. I think in order for people to really take local music seriously as an option, musicians need to manage that expectation that not everybody likes your weird niche-y thing that you're doing. You know what I mean? Like, How to Disappear Completely, one of my favorite bands ever to come out of the city, and probably one of my favorite bands of that genre ever. But it's difficult with a name like How to Disappear Completely, and what is probably considered to be a post-hardcore marketing program.
Yeah.
To get your average person to take the risk to come and see the show. The most advantageous thing you can do is to take a small crowd and encourage them to invite their friends every time.
Right. That's what we do. I don't want to say it's a pyramid scheme, because we're not making out like bandits. We're breaking even, if that. And that's it's branching out.
It's
and
not a pyramid scheme because you're sharing art.
Right. Exactly.
Ultimately,
exactly.
You're not trying to get anything from anybody.
Right.
You're trying to make, in your case, people that live in this area that like metal music aware of your band.
Right.
And it's up to them whether they like it or not. And you know whether they like it or not by how frequently they come back, how frequently they interact with you on social media, and how much money they're spending to enjoy your band. A lot of people take it way too fucking personally. not everybody's gonna dig.
I definitely have before. I definitely have all on the way. It's because it's really hard to be out of body like that. We're the band. I haven't not been in that band, so
yeah.
It's
Well, look at it this way. What would you consider to be the biggest legitimate metal band that exists present day?
Present day, Lamb of God, American staple of heavy metal.
How many people is Lamb of God gonna do in Syracuse?
In Syracuse?
Let's say we had a big room, we could fit an infinite amount of people in it. How many people does Lamb of God draw in Syracuse?
I don't know, man. I think it would just whatever room it is. If it's not outdoors, it's selling out. I don't know.
Well, try and put a number on it. Like how many Lamb of God fans do you think would pay $20 to see them in Syracuse?
In Syracuse,
surrounding area.
I'd say
hour drive.
Yeah, I'd say like 1,500.
Yeah. Okay, that's a fair assessment. Everybody likes to make fun of them, but I can tell you right now that if I booked Nickelback in Syracuse, I could get 8,000 to 10,000 people to show up.
Sure.
Which says to me that mainstream music is 8 to 10 times more popular than Lamb of God. So I equate that to, like there's a small segment of people that enjoy heavy music and metal and hardcore and whatever else you want to classify it as, because there's 4 million subgenres of everything now.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it from that perspective of if there's only 2,000 people in the immediate area that are willing to go and see Lamb of God, how many people are going to come and see my progressive metal band?
Right. It's the same ratio. It's just on a different scale. It's on a greater scale. Yeah. It still ends up being the same ratio.
So if you're talking a bigger local band being able to draw 200 or 300 people, then this band that's a niche of a niche only has the potential to do that many people, unless you can get a solid group of your friends to rally around you and continue to bring more and more people to the table. That's how you start a revolution. That's how you market. I mean, it's proven through history that it's all a matter of creating a small army in every sense of genuinely doing that. You know what I mean? It's having a street team. It's having a social media presence. It's getting out and actually giving your music to people. And that's the biggest thing for me is for a band like you guys, and I'm using you as an example because you're here, is stop wasting money printing CDs and trying to sell them to people.
Yeah.
Because frankly, that day and age is done. If I want your record, I will find a way to get it without paying for it. Sure. Not me personally, but that's the attitude. It's like everybody.
Thanks, Scott. He's got a record
with file sharing and downloading and everything else.
I hear you. We just ran out of our press of physical copies, and we're at that point. Man, what do we do?
And you're talking about a generation of people who feel that they're entitled to it because, well, I can just download anything I want from the internet. Why would I pay for it?
Yeah.
So the idea is to give the music away, make them a fan, and then sell them some overpriced shirt or button or whatever else. And that's what I've been telling everybody forever is you got to give them the music. Mm-hmm. If you don't give them the music, you're never going to gain new fans because we're in a day and age
they're not going to seek it out.
Yeah.
And there's so much shit out there. That's the thing, like getting people out to shows, it's so difficult. There's so many.
Oh, it's because everybody in Syracuse is a promoter. You know that, right? You didn't know that?
Yeah, promoter. We talked about it on the last, I think it was the last podcast. We talked about our definition of a promoter. So you need to have a Facebook account and on your smartphone, and that's it.
Yeah. The ability to bullshit.
Yourself,
and the ability to bullshit some agent and some venue owner into letting you pull off this show that you can't afford to pay for and you're going to bail on. Yeah. And then you leave a guy like me holding the bag to try and pull it all together for you. Nope, not doing it anymore. Right. There are, in my opinion, 5 legitimate promoters in this city, and anybody else that claims to be one can suck a dick.
Mm-hmm. So, I'm just thinking about that last line you said. That's amazing. That's amazing. So that, like, the attendance for shows. Yeah. When we're playing a big show in the area, I know that for every person that's in attendance, there are 2 more people. Zach used this example with me, sitting at home on Facebook, listening to whatever Periphery, you know? And it's like, yeah, whatever the band is. And it's like, dude, you would have came out to this and enjoyed yourself. I know it. Like it's a show that's right in the vein of it, and I don't understand. I guess that's like what is the cause of that? Like, what is the reason for that?
Technology is the cause of it. Because when I was 16, you went and you bought the record. Otherwise, you had to have hope that one of your friends was going to buy it and you could dub it tape to tape. You know, there wasn't any of that. Like, if you wanted it, you had to go buy it. There was no internet. If you wanted to see Metallica, you either went to a show or you bought one of their VHS tapes and watched it at your house. But that VHS tape was not an experience. It was something that made you salivate for going to see that band live. Well, now that's gone because every show, every concert that has existed in the last 15 years is in some way, shape, or form on the internet for you to enjoy for free. Just go to YouTube, type in your favorite name, the name of your favorite band in live, and you can sit in your house and not spend a dime and listen to it on surround sound or in fancy Beats by Dre headphones, and you know, like there's no reason. We've created a hermit society.
Yeah.
Like all you need is that computer that fits in your pocket, and you don't ever have to do anything. You know what my most annoying thing that I see at every single fucking show that I book or attend is this.
Yeah, they're watching it through the screen.
You're absent from the moment. Oh, by the way, I'm holding my hands above my head as if I'm holding a cell phone sideways.
Yeah.
Because this is an audio thing.
Because no one shoots videos in portrait here. We gotta go landscape if you're gonna shoot the.
It's not World Star Hip Hop. Turn your phone to the side.
That's right.
But it's. Why would you pay $25 to see a show and then not watch the show? Like, somebody else is doing exactly what you're doing. You can watch it again when you get home from somebody else's perspective, and maybe at that point you'll get that there's a different perspective because you certainly didn't buy the best seats in the house if you've got your phone in the air the entire time. And you're absent from the experience.
They're okay looking through a screen, I guess. I don't know.
But how are you present in that moment? You're not. You're so
I don't
worried
know
about,
because I don't get that.
Right. You're so worried about preserving this memory forever. There's no fucking memory. Your memory is I held a phone for an hour and a half while the Black Keys played. Do you remember any of the songs? I'm taking your phone away from you right now. You don't have your phone anymore. What song did they open with?
Right.
Oh, you don't remember. What was the encore? They played 3 songs in the encore. Name me one. Yeah, you were absent from the moment. You just spent $86 to see the Black Keys, and you took nothing from the experience but a shitty, low-pixel video on your phone that you're going to put on YouTube and cause 3,000 other people not to go pay money to see the Black Keys.
You're not going to watch. You're not going to go back and watch it. The greatest part about going to a show is that you might have snapped a few photos, but like that you go to the show and then years go by and you remember the show with friends, and because the whole taking the video, you're trying to capture the memory, but you're taking the conversation out of it and the recollection from it. Yeah, it's all right there, but where was the camaraderie? I went with this guy. We got in the car. Our car, we coasted into the gas station. We were out of gas. We got there. It was rainy. Somebody stole this from us. And then you remember the show, and that's, to me, that means more than a fucking video. And
it's disheartening, man. Like, I feel like in order for this country and the world as a whole to progress, there needs to be a much less reliance on technology, because it really is ruining the human race as a whole. It's making people antisocial. It's taking away the ability.
The social network is making us antisocial.
But think about how many weird, awkward people that we have to deal with in this day and age, because everybody's so sheltered and never leaves their house. You know, like we were talking about the internet cowboys earlier. I can't tell you how many of these people that I've confronted, and they just don't have articulation. They clam right up. It's like, why is there a person talking to me? Is he going to hit me? I'm going to have to call the cops and sue this guy. Like, then I'm going to have to, and then I'm going to have to talk to other human beings, and I'm just going to run away, and I'm never going to leave my house again. And that's kind of the mentality of most of these people in this day and age, and it's sad. Like, I remember walking from Lyncourt, which is like the northern part of the city, to the Lost Horizon. It's 4.7 miles. I actually made a point to time it out from the house that I grew up in as a teenager to the Lost. I can't tell you how many times, it's in the hundreds, that I walked there because I wanted to see a friend's band play, or because some band that I can't believe is coming to town was there. You know what I mean? I'm 15 years old. I don't even have a learner's permit. I want to go see the show. How do I get to the show? I'm walking. And then that walk home at 2 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, I can't think of a single kid that I know today that would do that. And just get on Facebook. Need a ride to the show tonight. who can grab me.
Right.
I got gas money. Fuck you, man. Figure your own shit out.
We had a kid, this guy, bike to the show because his ride fell through. It was our last show. Before it was Dark Day Sunday. It was our last show before we went on a hiatus. Dark Day Sunday with Bittner's band.
Yeah.
And he's like, when are you guys on? Like I don't want to miss it. My ride fell. And he biked.
Yeah.
It was a 45-minute bike ride. So you can imagine, because he lived on Electronics Parkway, and that was to the Lost.
Yeah. And
He
that was the
biked
little
there.
stage, the
That
Lost,
meant-
too. That wasn't even like a big deal show.
That meant well, it was a big deal because we
You know
were
what I
there.
mean. You know what I mean?
No,
Like-
but like that meant a lot. You know, not that he like almost went into cardiac arrest from getting there, but
Yeah.
like the whole point of that he, you know.
Yeah, same
bike
thing for
there.
me, man. Like I work with this local wrestling company called 2CW, and we have these ring crew kids, and it's the same thing in that industry as it is this. You can tell the kids that want it and are dedicated to it and are willing to put in the work, and the kids that aren't. There's this kid named Jerry Bikes, who I don't know where the fuck he lives, but it's somewhere around Syracuse. The kid didn't have a ride to our show in Watertown, so he rode his 10-speed on 81 from Syracuse to Watertown to be on the ring crew. This isn't a wrestler. This is a kid that carries heavy shit and sets the ring up and the barricade and the mats and, does all the shit that nobody else wants to do. Like, the kid loves it so much that instead of just calling us and being like, hey, I'm not going to make it, I don't have a ride to Watertown, got on his 10-speed and rode it on the shoulder of 81 from somewhere in Syracuse all the way to Watertown. Took him 5.5 hours.
I drove to Watertown and that sucked.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Yeah, there's nothing up there but a Sonic.
Oh, they have a Sonic?
They do, right off the highway, man. It's great. Cherry Limeade.
Awesome. Well, I love your point about the Hermit Society. I think that's like the best name that I've ever heard put on that kind of thing.
Well, you don't like millennials?
I know I don't like one. I don't like them because I am one, and I hate being called that. I like it.
Hey, man, I was
It's
Generation
one of
X.
those, it's one of those things. You don't want to be defined by what the rest of the world sort of sees your generation as being, and especially when that label comes to have so many negative qualities, so many like entitled qualities, so many lazy qualities, such like the antisocial thing, the
Yeah.
social antisocial sort of this phenomenon that we're talking about with like social media and technology. But I think the Hermit Society thing is like the best label I've heard put on it, because this is what we struggle with, and now I think we're at a point where we really recognize that the music we're making is a niche thing, and we're totally happy with that, and that's what our vision is, and we're happy carrying that out, and we recognize that it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea.
Right.
And it's totally okay, because there's a lot of stuff out there that's not our cup of tea.
Right.
And that's just what life is, Not everything that you do is going to make everybody love you and fawn over you, and I
Right.
think that's a good realization to come to. But at the same time, I feel like we're really, really struggling against this this culture of people not willing to go out and do anything, or not willing to go out and be a part of what we're trying to put on. I don't care if your average person that does listen to Nickelback doesn't like us, because that's not the point. We're not,
Yeah, you're not making
the music for that,
them.
but we are making music for the people that like. We'll put a label on it. We'll say like progressive metal or technical death metal or melodic death metal, or like something in that vein, something,
Right.
The people that listen to that music, we want those people at our shows. And that's the thing that we're kind of struggling with as far as like the Hermit Society thing,
Well, exactly what he's saying. I love, we all love the small army. It's difficult, it's teeth pulling to get the small army out to raise it. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing that a lot of people don't do is it's, tonight's a different situation for you guys. I mean, you're opening for a legendary death metal band. It's not a Spire show. It's an incantation show that Spire's playing. That brings a different group of people to the table. If you're talking about a Spire headliner, you just have to figure out a way to make that event an event and not just some show you're playing. Right. And nobody gets that anymore. Right. Whether it's you know, as awful as it is, like, hey, we picked a weird cover that we're going to play. Come see it. We're only going to do it once. That's worth the price of admission for somebody.
We do that every time we headline. We did an Amorphous cover at the Monterey show back last July. We covered Greed. And we've done Floyd, and I can't remember what else we used to do. Spin Me Round.
But do you do it as a selling point to the show? Like, do you get on social media and say,
we haven't necessarily ever
right,
sold it like that? Yeah,
and that's the idea,
right.
Or you know what I mean? Like, we're gonna pick 5 people at random, and you're gonna get a Spire package of shit. You're gonna get the CD, you're gonna get the T-shirt, and we're gonna let you into our next show for free. You know, share this event amongst your friends that you think would like it. And then you pick 5 people at random and you give them some free shit. And hopefully the work that they did by promoting your show via sharing it on Facebook and other social media brings 10 new people to the table. And then you have 10 more people in your army to do that to the next time you play. And then those 10 people begat 10 people each. And now you got 100 people that are now more aware of the band, and on it goes. And that's how social media was intended to be. But then algorithms were written to break that. And then, you know, people just, you know, once everybody's parents are on Facebook, it's over, right? You know what I mean? Like, my 69-year-old mom has a Facebook account now, so now it's just like, I have to second guess every time I threaten somebody on the internet, you know? Like,
every time I threaten this guy's life, I gotta really...
Well, it's not like I don't threaten individual people, but like, you've seen some of my posts, it's like, yo, you know, like...
I make popcorn before I read your posts.
Yeah, I've always been sort of that cliche angry dude, you know what I mean? But like, I've learned
it's
as
not
time
cliche
has
because you're a
progressed.
pioneer.
Not necessarily, man. There were dudes way before me.
You're an innovator to us.
You know, I've been called quite a few things over the years, and some of it's stuck with me to a degree. You know, like my favorite is being called the Hood Rat Hunter S. Thompson. Just because, you know, I've done quite a bit of writing over time, and, you know, like, you know, I've obviously, you know, experimented with, you know, any drug that you can put in your body. I've probably done at least once, minus this new craze of synthetic marijuana. But that's a topic for another day. But, you know, like, because I do so many things, like I work in radio full time, and I manage a club, and I play in some bands, and I'm associated with some professional wrestling, and I work for all these charity events, and I am a martial artist that studies jiu-jitsu and judo, and I have a marketing degree, and it's all these other things, and none of them clearly define me, but all of them are a part of what I am, and I feel like I can jump from one thing to another seamlessly because I've built this skill set.
Yeah.
In each of those things. So if somebody wants to put a label on that like that, then I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? But by the same token, like, nothing I do, in my opinion, is any more important than anything anybody else does. You know what I mean? I am articulate, and I am charming, and I can get people to do what I want them to do most of the time, which is support our local music scene. And if I can do that with 50,000 watts behind me, I'm going to. If I can do it because I have access to a venue that I can book because I manage it, I'm going to. If I have the ability to put my wrestling on a rock show to gain more exposure for both, I'm going to do that, and I have done that.
All right. So ideally, we like to spread out our shows locally, like 3 to 4 months apart. When the opportunities come up, as they often do, like this time. Well, yeah, like our shows that we put on and we headline. Yeah, we like to spread them out.
That,
yeah. But like we got this one with Incantation, and then we have the Contortionist. It's a month apart. That's what I like to do. You know, at least 30 days. How do you feel about like the bands that overflood? They just play, or they'll advertise on the event page of the show at the same venue, even like the night before it or the night after, like just overflooding like crazy because it's not in your control at that point.
Yeah, I think if you're a new band and you're an upstart band and you're just starting to make waves, play as much as you can. Don't have any expectations about getting paid or playing in any specific spot. But if I'll use Damon Laris as a good example of that. They're a good young band that have played on every type of show in town, never have their hands out at the end of the night, always come and find me, say thank you, always watch every other band that they play with, no matter what kind of band it is. That's the kind of band I want every band to be. I know it's never going to happen with egos and jobs and, you know, all that stuff, but they're the perfect example of, you know, who's doing it right. Mm-hmm. And then we had the One Stuff from Falling City release party last night. I won't name names, but there was a band that got there, loaded in, took off, went and had dinner, and came back 20 minutes before they played and left 20 minutes after they played.
Jesus.
And it's just like, oh, cool. Glad we wasted a spot on you.
Yep. Well, yeah, I had a issue with a show years ago where a local guy told me, you know, his band dropped. They just dropped off because it was too late to play. That was the day of the show, by the way. And he said, my job is not to watch the shows. My job is to play them.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he told
me. That's good. It's always nice to support your scene.
Yeah, but that with me, like, obviously play as much as you can. Like I support that, but on the flip side, like when we're booking our own shows, we're our own promoter. We're, you know, cutting out the middleman there. We're the people for it. When it's like being taken away from that, you know, like let's say they have like, this is our show, thank you for being on it, that kind of thing. We're promoting like crazy, and then they tell all their people to go to the one either the night before or the night after the big national show or something like that, and it's at the same like area, right in the same area.
It is what it is, man.
Right.
Like, for me, I've just gotten to a point where I don't care what other people do, and if you're dumb and you keep making dumb decisions, then I stop working with you. Mm-hmm. If you do things the right way, or at least the way you think is right, and you stand by your decision to do so, I'll still work with you, because at the very least, you're showing me that you've got some balls to do what it is that you think is right, despite what I've learned over the last 22 years. And I'll give you some advice and tell you whether I think you're right or wrong, but if you stick to it and you want to do it your way and you're not willing to compromise, and that shows some level of integrity on your part, and I give you my respect for that. I am going to tell you I told you so when it fails, but, you know, it's the nature of the beast.
Right. And it also seems like in the last few years that bands are really cliquey. Just that I've noticed, like, certain groups of bands are playing certain shows together, regardless of who else is. There's not like an awareness of like, hey, there's a show the same night, you know. Even like with tonight, nobody's at fault here, but like somebody, like, you got a metal show that's playing at Gorham Brothers.
That actually got canceled.
That got canceled.
Something happened.
Yeah, and there was a lot of talk like, oh, Incantation's the same night. You know what I mean? Like, there's no finger pointing. There's just saying that that there was an issue with it.
I'm just gonna put it out there. Like, the Incantation show was booked and announced how many months ago?
Right, exactly.
And it's for me, and I've got nothing against the Gorham boys. They're some of my good friends, and I love what they do with that store.
Yeah, we've had great times there.
Every band that they've been in, from Engineer to Blood Sun Circle, and now, you know, on to the softer stuff they do with the acoustic thing. But and it's not them booking the show. There's a promoter that doesn't pay attention. That, oh, hey, Incantation's playing, and it goes back to that. Everybody's a fucking promoter, and you're not, man. Like, and no offense to Gorham Brothers, because I love that store, but if you're just some dude that runs DIY venues and you never make any money, and I'm not talking about you, John Bukowski, you're not a real promoter. Bukowski does it out of love. Yeah, and has bands.
We got to work with him for the first time at the last Gorham show we played in February. It was great.
And I don't want him to think that any of this is directed towards him, because I know that his heart's in the right place, and he's not doing this to make a buck or to get over on anybody. He does it because he's bringing bands to Syracuse that he wants to see, and he knows that he's going to lose money, and he saves up money. It's the same way I look at booking Murder by Death. There's this band that plays to 1,000 people every night in every other city but Syracuse. I can get 400 people to come to see him in Syracuse and run at a loss, which is usually somewhere between $200 and $400, and I would rather do that than pay $200 to $400 between tickets and gas and hotels to go see them in New York or Philly or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, and if John's willing to do that on a smaller scale regularly and still hook up local bands and make sure they get something out of the experience, then God bless him. He's not the guy that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the guys that just do shows to do shows just because. Like, if you don't have a rhyme or a reason to do it, why are you doing it? You know what I mean? Like, and you guys have played some of my weird showcase shows. Like, I intentionally match bands up that don't fit together because who knows that One Step From Falling fan doesn't really love metal and sees you and is like, oh my God, I didn't know this existed in my city.
Yeah, I like that you do those. That's
Cross
great.
promotion, man. Is it's at the root of it. Anybody that's going to come and see a bill filled with local original music has a passion for it in some way, shape, or form. So maybe they're there because they're friends with that guy that plays guitar in that other band, but they don't really like that band. But they're passionate about it because their friend's passionate about it, and they show up in Spire's on the bill. And you know, this dude's like a secret Children of Bodom fan, and he sees you guys. He's like, oh my God, Syracuse has this, and now he's a Spire fan, and that happened because he had a passion for something. You guys have a passion for something, and you happen to. You know, the stars align and fate took over, and there you are. I like to think that happens more than it actually does. I know that it doesn't.
Well, and I don't like that it has to be the stars aligning. You know, like it seems like this is happening for a reason. I mean, you're putting on these local shows, these locals only shows, and you are mixing it up, and it isn't really so cosmic why people come together and meet. Like, I don't know.
I think that's it's unfair for a couple of reasons. A, I have 50,000 watts and 80,000 listeners that these shows get promoted to.
Yeah.
So you can't really use my shows as the rule; they're the exception. As far as everything else and the stars aligning, that stuff needs to happen more.
Yeah.
There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, I don't know, like the whole health thing, not to backtrack, has sort of taught me something over the last 5 years, and that thing is to just let go and let life lead you. Things, I don't want to say things are meant to be, but as far as I'm concerned, I still consider myself to be an atheist. I don't believe there's any sort of power larger than any of us. I don't believe in anything but karma, and I guess in some way that aligns me with the Buddhist view of things, which I've never studied because I don't care to, because I don't believe in Buddha. I believe in karma. I feel like whatever you put out into the universe, you get in return. And if you're a shitty person, then shitty things are going to happen to you. And if you're a good person, good things are going to happen to you. But it only happens when you truly let go and let life lead you. When you stop overthinking things, when you stop letting petty decisions and day-to-day bullshit that doesn't matter dictate what you do, what you like, where you go, and essentially at the end of the day, who you are. And if more people did that, we would see more people at local original shows, because it's not cool to like local bands. You know what I mean? And I don't ever want to get to a point where I feel like I'm preachy or I'm trying to make something seem cooler than it is. I just simply have a ton of pride in the fact that we all exist in a Rust Belt city that industry has left behind. The city is a shell of itself.
Yeah.
And those of us that have stayed and persevered should have pride in what we have done and what we have. Because I have traveled a lot, and because I work in radio and I have that network of people, I do get to hear what's going on in other cities with unsigned music and local music. And there are very few cities across this great nation of ours that have the talent level that Syracuse, New York has. And anything that does compare, you're talking major market. You're talking Nashville, you're talking Austin, you're talking LA, you're talking Seattle. But for market number 91, which means we are the 91st biggest city in America, if you go from, let's just call it 50 to 150, man, we excel in a multitude of facets. You know what I mean? Like, we're not a metal town, we're not a hardcore town, we're not an alternative town, but there are bands in every single one of those genres that can equal a band that's on a national level, in my opinion. I think we have our own version of Explosions in the Sky right here with Onaka and the Burning River.
Yeah.
I think we have our own version of Story of the Year or Trapped with Cry to the Blind. I feel like Jeremiah's Razor is every bit the band that Bullet for My Valentine is. The Afro-Nips far exceed anything that's happening in that weird post-Jack White two-piece thing that seems to be a trend these days. And then you've got a multitude of other bands that exist in other genres. Like there's a band called Mountains and Valleys here that rely heavily on the flugelhorn. You know what I mean? Like how often does that have? It's like, they took what a lot of people would compare to like that the song with the whistling, the Peter Bjorn and whatever the fuck it was from like 5 years ago, and they get lumped into that category of like Americana, and it's not. Like this is a dude that grew up listening to Fugazi, I think, and stuff in that genre that just dropped the pretenses and realized like I don't want to make that music. I like that music too much to try and recreate it. Like let me write music that actually comes from me. Like let me sort of bare my scars, open my soul to the world, and he did. And it's quiet and it's charming and it's very subtly infectious. And to me, it far exceeds anything that I've heard like it. I think it's the next level. I think it belongs sitting there alongside some of the stuff that Jim James and Marcus Mumford do on their own outside of their projects, which would be My Morning Jacket and Mumford and Sons. It's weird, like I perception-wise, people look at me with the beard and the bald head and the tattoos and today the disembodied T-shirt and just assume that like, oh, he's like this hardcore dude or he's like totally into metal. And truthfully, like, and no offense, because I know you guys are huge metal dudes, but like, I could give a fuck about heavy music anymore. Yeah. And the angry young man in me loves that and still does. When I get angry, I put on Every Time I Die records or Snapcase and Earth Crisis and Judge and all this music that I grew up, being a moron at Hungry Charlie's to jumping off of stuff onto people and flailing around like there's a bunch of invisible ninjas we're fighting, like I get it, like that was a time and a place and it's a memory, but the first record I ever bought was Mothership Connection by Parliament Funkadelic, and my youth was shaped by Motown. And it's difficult for me because I don't like jazz. I appreciate it. I respect it. I hate jam bands. I need song structure. If it has hand claps in it, I'm gonna like it. And it really boils down to me is like, I don't know if it was the music I grew up on or what it was, but like I think my taste in music sort of makes me who I am in the radio industry and in booking shows, because I feel like I trained myself at an early age to recognize a hook and certain parts of songs that connect with people. And when I find artists that do that for me, I fall in love immediately. And while I do like a lot of very strange music, like Onekon the Burning River, there's really no hook there. There's no vocal, obviously, so there's no melody in that capacity. There's no anthemic thing. But, that comes from knowing why that record was written and honoring our friend Ben. And, that album creates a memory and represents a time and a place for me. And while it's nothing that I would ever really share with too many people, that, it's like, oh, hey, here's the new Oneka. It's going to blow you away, man. We got to get this to radio. I share it with people that I think will appreciate it. While it does get regular airplay because they deserve it with the work that they've put into it, but like I can honestly say that 95% of the music that I'm forced to play on 95X, I fucking hate with a passion. Mm-hmm. The Disturbs and the System of a Downs and the Godsmacks. And, and if you like that music out there in podcast land, I understand it and you have the right to like that. But to me, it's what I refer to as lowest common denominator music. It is stomp, stomp, grunt, 2-chord Charlie bullshit that anybody with an aptitude for an instrument could pull off. And while I applaud you for making it catchy enough and marketable enough to be successful, I don't have to like it. It's not made for me. Yeah, sure. So don't get mad when I don't like it. And then these are the same people that make fun of me for syncing up 4 CD players to play Embryonic by the Flaming Lips. You know what I mean? Like, But it's like these guys created this piece of art that is meant to be enjoyed in a certain way. And why on earth, if I bought it, would I not try and listen to it in the way that it was intended to be listened to? So, you know, it's just like you have your thing, which is, you know, Godsmack. And I have mine, which is people pushing boundaries and bearing their soul, so to speak. And the people that bear their soul with song structure and honesty, and that's what connects immediately for me, you know. And whether it's a band like Manchester Orchestra or like Bob Mould, who's a legend in the industry, man, like Husker Du to Sugar, and now doing the Bob Mould band. I mean, here's this 57-year-old homosexual guy that writes in this day and age. I mean, he had 2 albums leading up to Silver Age that were essentially love letters to his ex-boyfriend. You would look at me and assume that, like, there's no fucking way that maniac listens to that and has any connection to it. But it's like, those songs are fantastic, and it's so heartfelt. And I don't care that they were written about a dude.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's
2015.
Yeah, it's a fantastic record. It's filled with soul, and not in the James Brown soul kind of way, but like, this dude's laying it out there, man. Like, and how can you not respect that? This motherfucker made Husker Du and Sugar. You know what I mean? He brought these things into this world that I love, and now he's doing something completely different that I also love. So, like, what difference?
So you're not limited. You're not limited to genres. You're.
I don't. I mean,
it's if something is going to.
I would be hard pressed to name a recent or somewhat recent metal or hardcore band that I give a shit about, and that breaks my heart because.
Well, no, and
it's gotten bastardized.
It doesn't break ours.
Commercial.
Yeah,
like,
it doesn't break ours because when someone says that, it's like, sure, because we're stereotyped. It sucks.
You're not. I mean,
I feel that we are.
What you guys do is completely different because there aren't 400 bands doing what you're doing, and you guys aren't doing that fucking squatting on dicks choreography bullshit. That all of these fucking metalcore bands that just chug, 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 mosh part, chug, chug, chug. I'm angry with my father, chug, 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 mosh part.
My dad's a good guy, so
it's just like all this tough guy bravado bullshit has been done over and over for the last 20 years, and you're not going to break any new ground, and you're never going to be any bigger than Hatebreed. Like, accept that. Here's a band that plays to around 2,000 people a night and is never going to get any bigger because it's, for lack of a better way to put it, like dumb guy music. I mean, what is there to a Hatebreed song? I don't mean that in a negative way because
Open 1-3 record deal for me.
Yeah. I mean, I you know, you go back to the Perseverance record, I enjoyed the shit out of that.
Yeah.
And then Rise of Brutality, I think, was the next one, and it was okay. And then I stopped giving a shit because I
grew up on Perseverance.
You can only play that style of music so much before you're going back and redoing and rehashing and making songs that sound like other songs.
It's a copy of a copy thing.
Yeah, never as sharp as the original. Yeah.
It's your old albums.
And it gets diluted. And for me, a band like Hatebreed, by now, should be doing what Terabyte's doing. You guys know Terabyte, Justin Spalding, Sam Mezzo's thing.
Oh, yeah. I heard something about that.
You know, it's
I gotta
like,
check it out.
You're beating a dead horse at this point, and to me, you're bastardizing your legacy. You had a few fantastic albums, and now you're just churning out this mediocre thing so that you can tour every year.
Yeah.
Stop. Why bother? You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in pre-production and studio time and promotion and making videos that nobody watches to go out on tour and play to the same 2,000 people in every city across America every 18 months.
Yeah.
What part of that process is costing you the most money? Making the record. So stop making the record. Just go out and tour on the music that you've already existed. These same 2,000 goons are going to show up and punch each other in the face anyway.
Yeah, there you go.
It doesn't matter if it's a new song or an old song. They all sound the same.
I want to hear the old shit anyway.
Yeah,
I want to hear the old shit. Skinheads. Yeah, man. So as this will be a very, like, as brief as we can make it, basically just a closing statement. I hear this all the time. I don't know if you hear this. I hear a lot of pessimism, regarding the heavy music scene in the Syracuse area. And I've heard this countless times. The scene's dead here. Scene's dead here, man. I've heard this. I've heard scene's dead. Whether that guy goes out to the show or not, I mean, personally, I feel that you grind the gears and you give it life here. That's,
I appreciate.
I'm not
that,
trying to boast the ego. I'm saying that's.
And I say this all the time because it's true. If there weren't bands worth booking, what the fuck would I be doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to compromise my level of integrity and present something that I don't believe in.
Mm-hmm.
The scene is what you make of it. You know what I mean? Like, if you think it's dead, then fuck you. Walk away and don't participate anymore. We don't want you anyway.
Yeah.
Take your negative bullshit somewhere else. And for those that do participate, like, I understand that it's a daunting task to take what you love and present it in an honest and earnest manner to the people that are in your life that may not necessarily understand why you're so passionate about these local musicians. But it's not going to grow unless you help us bring more people to the table.
Yeah.
Because we all know that at the root of it, and this is no offense to you guys being musicians, but musicians come in one of two categories. You are either the most extroverted person in the world and you put your charm on display and attract people to your show based on that, or you're this weird introvert that started playing music because you can't interact with other people.
Yeah.
And guess where the talented people lie? Over here.
Yeah.
They're the weirdos. They're the
introverts,
quiet ones that do drugs on their own and OD way too early because they don't have an outlet besides their music.
Yep.
So if we don't support this as people that enjoy the music that's being created and try and spread that word, so to speak, then yes, the art dies. So I don't necessarily know that this lies in full on the people making the music. I think it relies pretty heavily on people like myself that have a passion for it and a vision for it. I think that I do my part. And there are times I think I don't do enough, but there are only a finite amount of minutes in a day for me to be active and,
of course,
and be useful. It would be fantastic to know that there were 10 other guys like me in a community of just under 200,000 people that had that same attitude of let's just make a mark and who gives a fuck about the money and who gives a fuck who thinks it's cool. But unfortunately, that's not the case. There's maybe 3 of us. And unfortunately, I think that number is going to probably decrease as time progresses.
Yeah.
Because as people become adults, you lose that youthful exuberance for things and you become a slave to paying your bills and doing what society tells you should be doing at a certain age. It sucks. It's America. But there's enough counterculture out there. I mean, let's go back to the year 2000, man. Hardcore wasn't mainstream. Hardcore was happening in the Ukrainian home, in the Westcott Community Center, and Club Polsky, and on Sunday afternoons when we couldn't sell alcohol at bars anyway. Why not use this as a source of revenue? And now hardcore is mainstream. You know, I was drawn to hardcore because that's where all the weirdos went. All the people that didn't have friends in high school went to this one place where all the outcasts went, and we banded together and we created this thing. And then all the cool kids moved in on it because it was deemed cool, and then kicked all of us the fuck out. And now it's time for us to take it back. And I don't mean that in a hardcore mentality, hardcore rules. You know what I mean? I'm not Rick to life. But what I am is passionate about the fact that this city that has one museum that's had the same bullshit on display since I was a little fucking kid, no real culture, and a society that fights anybody that stands up and tries to do something artistic, the fact that we all persevere and still continue to do it, to me, lends legitimacy to the entire movement. The fact that there's an art park on the west side that nobody goes to for any other reason than to do drugs or like have sex in public, you know, like that's really what it's there for. I mean, how many people have ever really driven up West Fayette Street and stopped and looked at that art? Because there's 4 or more art installations right there. You know what I mean? When's the last time that somebody told you about an art gallery or an installation, or like, hey, like my friend so and so's art is hanging at this restaurant. You don't hear about that because nobody supports that shit. And I think we're more fortunate than the actual classic artists in Syracuse, because at least we have a small devoted following.
Yeah.
Dudes that are making paintings don't have jack shit. You're not going to get it on the walls of the Everson, and that's the only legitimate museum in town. You've got to hope that you have a friend that knows a friend that might own somebody, like Possibilities, where they'll put up 6-year paintings in the booths in the front and maybe put a placard up. What I give a lot of credit to are like Ben and Jamola that run Resurrected Tattoo for putting local art on their walls. Like they've had Brendan Flynn's stuff in there and countless other people. The Devlin building, which is also on West Fayette Street, has art shows for local musicians, or not local artists, all the time, and we've gotten away from that. You know what I mean? Like there for a long time, especially throughout the 90s, were these shows, and I forget the name of the group, and I apologize for it, but it's basically the people in and around like the Born Again Savages, Undergang, Zadok portion of our scene that were doing these shows where there would be art and music in the same space.
That's really cool.
It started in places like the Starlight Ballroom and ended up at the Halfpenny, and now the Halfpenny's gone, and there's no place for that. And the Lost isn't the venue for that. I've already got pictures all over the walls and no place to really display art. But if you're
There's art in
listening
the
out
men's
there
bathroom.
and you're looking for a way to make a difference, like figure out a way to put art and music back together, and maybe we can inspire each other to do something. You know what I mean? Like this is a city that doesn't even have like a legitimate newspaper. And yes, I'm talking about Post Standard. Syracuse.com has really illustrated that whoever has the money gets the press coverage, and I don't think that that's what reporting the news should be. And I'm going to talk a little shit here. Just because your dad is the fucking managing editor of the newspaper and your band got to play on top of the fucking building doesn't legitimize your band in anybody's fucking eyes.
Yeah.
You're still just 4 weirdos that happened to strike it lucky, and you talked a bunch of shit about your hometown to get your hometown buzzing about you because nobody gave a fuck. And we still don't. And guess what? Nobody's mentioned your name in months. And you can be off touring the world. And I have all the respect for the fact that you made it. But the fact that you made it at the expense of cutting down people here that supported you in other projects until you got to your terrible new noise band, fuck you. Don't come back.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to ever support you. I'll never play your shit on the air. I'll never book your band. And chances are, I mean, granted, there's a girl in that band. I would not punch her in the face, and I have squared away things with the drummer. But there's still other people.
Your
in
girl
that
would
band.
talk you out of that.
Yeah, no. This is one that you're not going to talk me out of because, like the way certain religious people are about their religion is the way that I feel about our local music scene. Is I hold it in the highest regard. I treat it with respect because it has treated me with nothing but respect. And I am not going to tolerate somebody disrespecting the hard work that thousands of my friends have put into creating the ability for us to do the things that we do. And without giving them too much mind, they essentially used one negative experience that one member of that band had that I still don't believe actually happened to fuel their view on the Syracuse music scene and attacked the Syracuse hardcore scene in an effort to get a reaction to thus prove their point. And then nobody reacted the way they wanted, so they basically gave up. Essentially, they talked enough shit about the right people who they knew were reactionary. They were trying to elicit that response. They didn't get it, and they gave up. And when's the last time you heard their name? Yeah. So again, you can all go fuck yourselves. You tried really hard to make us all look like assholes and make yourselves look like you were bigger and better. And maybe you are getting to go out and tour, but I'll tell you, in the grand scheme of things, the people around here are going to remember a marginal cover band that plays every weekend in towny bars far more than they're going to remember you in your fucking world tour to 30 people a night across the fucking continent of Europe and Asia. Plain and simple. You shit on the scene, so the scene is not going to support you.
Yeah.
So have fun playing basements and your secret little house shows that are so cool. And it goes back to that fucking hipster mentality. When you have to justify the style of music you're playing by putting the word noise in front of it, means that you're not really a fucking musician. If your whole thing is making noise with electronic devices and then putting it to quote unquote music, you're not talented. I could do that. Give me a fucking dial-up modem and a drum machine, and I can make noise punk too, or noise core, whatever the fuck it is that you're trying to do. It's not music. It might be to some people, and I'm sorry to the people. If you're offended by my views,
Don't be sorry.
Don't be, because like I'm.
We don't have any noisists out
But
there.
you know, it's just like, I really love Weston Xerxes, who used to front Oak and Bone, who's now really into this noise thing, and I give him nothing but respect for changing gears midstream, sort of the way he did, and reinventing himself and being really into this.
Yeah.
It's not for me. It's not meant for me, and I get that. But by the same token, he made this change and started making this new music, and not once said a negative word about his previous experience, his previous bands, or anybody else here. So to me, I don't like what he does, but I support what he does.
Yeah. It's all about integrity.
Absolutely.
It's all about integrity and honesty, for sure. Yeah, man, I can respect. It doesn't matter if you're on board with what. It doesn't have to catch your taste buds. It just has to. You have to know that it comes from something real. And I think with so much music out there, people have to do a little bit of research. You got to get through the bullshit, get through that first layer to really understand where people are coming from and if it's real.
So if you're generally looking for a closing statement, it would be this, and it's just a couple of quick points, which is, if you have a preconceived notion about who I am, chances are you're wrong. Mm-hmm. B, if you think I don't like your band, you're probably right, but it doesn't mean that I won't help. Don't be afraid to reach out. If you're making professional recordings and you're a professional working band, and I will do what I can when I can for you. But remember, you have to stay on top of me. There are hundreds of bands in this town. I work 2 full-time jobs, and if you're not going to remind me that you exist, chances are I'm going to forget. And again, I'm going to reiterate 2 points that we made throughout this. One is that hard work does in fact pay off. It does. I'm living proof of that. I came up with nothing, basically raised myself from the age of 8, and while I may not be financially rich, I still drive a 1997 Saturn wagon. I live in a house that my fiance owns, and I am broke as a joke all the time. But I am not unhappy, and I would not change a single thing that's ever happened in my life, because that would alter the path that I was on and ultimately not let me be right here, right now, in this moment. And then, lastly, it's what I said earlier is stop giving a shit about what people you don't know think about you, because it really, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't fucking matter. Let go, let life lead you, and I guarantee you end up happier and mentally healthier in the long run.
Thanks, man. Yeah, well, you've done great by us, and we thank the God who doesn't exist that you're, that you've been a part of this scene, and that you've helped it.
If it exists in your life, then it exists in your life. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm I'm making a joke.
Yeah. I'm just saying that. You know what I mean? Like, again, it's. Like, you have to be careful around those hot button topics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But by the same token, like, I have my beliefs and you have yours, and the people listening to this all have theirs. And I'm not trying to change your mind on anything. I'm just simply giving you the perspective of a dude that's lived through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of shit.
That's our part 2 podcast.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah, dude. I can do this whenever you want, and I can sit and fill hours and hours and hours
you have
of weird
fun?
stories. I had a blast, man. This is always a good
Awesome.
time. Minus the fact that we did it at my job,
Yeah. You can say what you want to say at your job here.
Yeah, it's pretty rare I get to sit in this chair in front of this microphone and say fuck. So that was kind of nice today.
I just say because I have a lack of vocabulary. Let me just do a couple show updates here. Saturday, May 9th, we're in Boonville at the Halbert House with Inhumatus inside the Cypher. Nil Existence, that's, I believe Mark Berlin from Cosmic Sea is in that band. Doors are at 8 p.m., and it's $5. Wednesday, May 27th, we are in Syracuse at the Lost Horizon with the contortionist Chan Aris. I think I'm saying that right. Oris, yeah. And Thoughts in Reverse, doors are at 6. It's all ages. Please get there when doors open. We'll be on early. It's $14 pre-sale. And Saturday, June 6th, we're in Hannibal. It's Trish stock. There are a ton of bands on this. Pre-sales are normally $25, but we're running them for $15. We're doing it for you guys. So all tickets can be ordered from spiremetal.bandcamp.com/merch. Scott, do you have any plugs that you want to plug?
You should definitely get a new link for your tickets, man.
A new link for our tickets?
That's a fucking mouthful. Spire band /
Well,
merch
that's what we're doing.
/ tickets / ticketfly.com.
Well, that's what we're trying. We got a thing for people to support us. And
I get it.
You know.
It's just I'm just gonna say this: like, if you're ordering tickets online from a local band, you're a lazy piece of shit, and you should get up off your couch and actually go see another human being. And do what you do every day when you go in and you buy that stupid, overpriced Starbucks coffee and interact with another human being.
I agree. We should sell tickets at Starbucks right over Sheryl Crow's new one. But so that's my message to them is that we're going to keep it a long-ass tag so that they have, spiremetal.bandcamp.com/merch until you actually call us up and we'll bring them to your house, buy them in person. Well, Scott, thanks for being on this. I look forward to your autobiography, which you need to write.
I've been told that a million times.
That's the Riffcast. Questions or comments, please email us at spirenymetal@gmail.com for bonus material from these conversations and more updates on what we have going on. Please click join our mailing list in the left-hand column of our Facebook page if you're on a computer. Smartphoners, we're trying to come up with a better way to do this since that link doesn't show up for you now. So you can join our mailing list by going to spire.fanbridge.com. Thanks for listening and see you at the show.